Hey, good Tuesday morning to you. Reading from chapter 24. Chapter 23 ended with Paul being sent over to the governor. And so we'll begin with 24 and look at this chapter. And after 5 days, Ananias, the high priest, came down with the elders and a certain orator named Tertullus. They gave evidence to the governor against Paul. And when he was called upon, Tertullus began his accusation, saying, "Seeing that through you we enjoy great peace and prosperity as before brought to this nation by your foresight, we accept it always and in all places, most noble Felix, with all thankfulness. Nevertheless, not to be tedious to you any further, I beg you to hear by your courtesy a few words from us. For we have found this man a plague, a creator of dissension among all the Jews throughout the world, and a ringleader of the sect of the Nazarenes. He even tried to profane the temple, and we seized him and wanted to judge him according to our law. But the commander, Lysis, came by and with great violence took him out of our hands, commanding his accusers to come to you. By examining him yourself, you may ascertain all these things of which we accuse him." And the Jews also assented, maintaining that these things were so. Then Paul, after the governor had nodded to him to speak, answered, "Inasmuch as I know that you have been for many years a judge of this nation, I do the more cheerfully answer for myself, because you may ascertain that it is no more than 12 days since I went up to Jerusalem to worship. And they neither found me in the temple disputing with anyone, nor inciting the crowd, either in the synagogue or the city. Nor can they prove the things of which they now accuse me. But this I confess to you, that according to the way which they call a sect, I worship the God of my fathers, believing all things which are written in the law and in the prophets. I have hope in God, which they themselves also accept, that there will be a resurrection of the dead, both of the just and the unjust. This being so, I myself always strive to have a conscience without offense toward God and men. Now after many years I came to bring alms and offerings to my nation, in the midst of which some Jews from Asia found me purified in the temple, neither with the mob nor with the tumult. They ought to have been here before you to object if they had anything against me, or else let those who are here themselves say if they found any wrongdoing in me while I stood before the council. Unless it is for this one statement which I cried out, standing among them, concerning the resurrection of the dead, I am being judged by you this day." But when Felix heard these things, having more accurate knowledge of the way, he adjourned the proceedings and said, "When Lysis, the commander, comes down, I will make a decision on your case." So he commanded the centurion to keep Paul and to let him have liberty, and told him not to forbid any of his friends to provide for or visit him. And after some days, when Felix came with his wife Drusilla, who was a Jew, who was Jewish, he sent for Paul and heard him concerning the faith in Christ. Now as he reasoned about righteousness, self-control, and judgment to come, Felix was afraid and answered, "Go away for now. When I have convenient time, I will call for you." Meanwhile, he also hoped that the money would be given him by Paul, that he might release him. Therefore he sent for him more often and conversed with him. But after 2 years, Porcius Festus succeeded Felix, and Felix, wanting to do the Jews a favor, left Paul bound. And so in this chapter, we see a few things going on. One is Paul has been moved, and he is there with the governor. They come to accuse him before Felix. Felix hears their accusation. It is all Jewish things. It is not of the law of the Romans. And then Paul answers for himself and says, "I believe in the resurrection of the dead. I am a follower of the sect called the Way. And this is what they're accusing me of." And it tells us that Felix, in verse 22, had heard these things. He had a more accurate knowledge of the Way. And he said, we'll listen more whenever Lysis, the commander, comes, so we can find out really what happened. But then after some days, he came with his wife Drusilla, and Drusilla was Jewish, so she knew the Old Testament. She knew that part. And so Paul starts to reason with him, and he talks to him about righteousness, self-control, and the judgment to come. My friends, those are three things that every human being needs to think about: righteousness, self-control, and judgment to come. It says Felix was afraid, and he said, "Go away for now. When I have a convenient time, I will call for you." I've heard different ones talk about this passage that maybe he wasn't really afraid, but I believe he was, because all of us, built down within us, is this God vacuum of knowing that we are going to be examined, judged for our sinfulness. So Felix was afraid, and it says now that he would call for Paul, hoping to get money to release him. And don't miss what happened in verse 27. It says, but after 2 years, Paul was there for 2 years. Friends, sometimes we live in a society that thinks because we've had a bad day, the world is terrible and it's come to an end. We have some folks that have a bad situation for a week, a bad week at work, or a bad week at school, or just a bad couple of days, or maybe a bad season of the winter time or something. But Paul was there for 2 years. Paul counted it a privilege to suffer for Christ. Paul realized no matter where he was, there he was, and Jesus was with him. I pray today that you will realize that no matter where you are, what your situation is, Christ has promised that if you are his, he is there with you. He will walk with you. He will not leave you nor forsake you. And so be a witness where you are. Live with him and have joy in the journey and find out what he is doing to you and through you for the sake of the kingdom. And so I just pray that you'll remember that. I know we have many who are struggling with different things in life, these seasons of life that we go through, but we have a greater hope. We have the hope of heaven. And so I pray for you this day that you'll enjoy the day that God has given you here, that you'll be that witness, and that you'll walk in peace and take this journey with him and realize that the journey we're on will end at the throne in a place called heaven. Know that you're loved, and know as always at Westview we're here for you. You have a great day, and God bless.